Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur. And today I want to help answer the question, so you want to be an influencer? Here's how to do it and how not to. So influencers right now are all the rage. Everywhere you look, you see a new story of somebody making a huge payday while they're living what seems to be a dream life, right? They make a single post online and they're getting paid $10,000, $20,000. Wow, like every single post, all they've got to do is pose with a product or, put this on their Instagram or on their TikTok or whatever. And so these influencers are, posting, making tons of money. It looks like they're jet setting on yachts and they're vacationing all the time. They're always happy. They're always smiling. Everything is always, champagne and roses, right? And the fact of the matter is, with influencing, you can go from a nobody to a somebody, right? And it's open to everybody. So that is really the appeal. And the reason it's caught on and becomes so popular is because people see the accessibility of the idea of just being able to be there, promote something or share something on their feed, and be able to make lots of money from being able to do that. And so the idea of being able to do that when you don't have any necessary connections or link to Hollywood or agent or any of these other kinds of things, and be able to do it from your own home, your own bedroom, whatever else, and then possibly generate more money than you could ever earn at a job, is certainly a very exciting idea. And you can understand why lots of people would want to get into it, or at least figure out, hey, is this real? Is this something possible? Is this something that I could ever do? And because it's sort of open to all, it seemingly democratizes the idea of success and fame, right? I mean, in the old days, historically, the way that it worked is if you wanted to be a musician, if you wanted to be an artist, you would have to make demo tapes and you would have to send them into one of the sort of oligopoly firms that were record producers, so Capitol Records or whatever they were. And if one of those half a dozen producers at those companies wasn't interested in what you had to offer, you were done. Your music career ended as fast as it started. You could keep trying, but they were the gatekeepers for the entire industry. There was no other way to get found. Maybe you got lucky and you were playing at a club somewhere and somebody happened to hear you, and I'm sure that's happened here and there. But for the most part, what happened was people submitted tapes, somebody heard it, and then they went to listen to them and said, wow, this is something, I'm going to sign you. And then they signed them, and ultimately the music producers took all the money anyway in the beginning records, and they didn't make any money until they were already really famous anyway. And unfortunately, a lot of those kinds of things work the same way. Hollywood was the same way. You needed an agent, you needed someone to represent you. You couldn't even get into auditions for anything good unless you were good. Now it's all changed, right? You can be someone who has some talent and you can make a video. You can, you can make a song and publish it online. You can make a video of whatever your talent is, publish it online, and that's available for the whole world to see. There is no gatekeeper. You put something on YouTube, anyone in the that has access to YouTube and an internet connection can see your video. And so what it's done is it's democratized the idea that if you have a talent, you can become successful. If you have something that can make you or famous, because you can develop a big following by doing that, right? And so on the surface, it really sounds like a dream. There are a lot of perks. You can make a lot of money. You can become micro-famous. I mean, some people become really famous, but for the most part, it's usually micro-famous within whatever niche you're in, if you're an influencer in that niche. If somebody walked around who was, an influencer in the travel niche, I'd have no idea who they are. But if you were someone who traveled all the time and read about travel bloggers, you might say, wow, that's so-and-so. Oh my God, I can't believe they're here, right? And so that element of it is it can be neat or whatever. You feel like, it looks like you have tons of freedom and tons of fun and you're just making money hand over fist. And but the question that I have is that if that is all 100% unfiltered truth and reality, then why is it that for every great success story and fantasy life that we see and hear about, there's an equal opposite story of an influencer who seemingly has it all, but is depressed, is lonely, has decided to shut down their account, or sometimes, tragically, has taken their own life? Because, first off, it's important to note that there's no doubt that becoming an influencer can be life-changing, and that some of the hype is absolutely real. So is the possibility of everything that we see on the positive side actually accurate, real, and true? Sure, yeah, it absolutely is. There are people that do live that life, and there are people that do get those perks, and they did come from relatively nothing, and they did, be able to create that without the help of any sort of connection or other thing. And so that's really, exciting and has a lot of potential. But we need to look a little bit deeper at exactly how people become influencers to really understand why there's such an extreme range of results and the right way and the wrong way to do it. So the one way of becoming an influencer is sort of the low-hanging fruit. And this is based on physical appearance or maybe a persona, right? So if you are someone who happens to be very attractive or very physically fit, or something about you physically is appealing to other people and they want to see that, right? That is something that's very easy because it translates perfectly through images and videos. You don't need to work hard, you don't need to do much in order to be able to present yourself in that way and get people to tune in. There's countless stories of, collegiate level like athletes that are actually being followed not because of their athleticism, but because of the way that they look. There are countless other people that are in the same sort of sphere, and the reason they're being followed is not because of the content they're making and there's value to it, but because of the way that they look and the way that they appear on camera and the things that they do or whatever else. Then there's the whole persona element of this, which is similar but slightly different. It may not be a physical trait or characteristic, but it's sort of an idea that you have in your mind about what people want. So you pretend to be something, or you share only a part of who you are in a way that you think is very marketable, right? So I won't name names, but I know of a particular YouTube account that makes a lot of money, and they make these sort of family videos or whatever. And what's interesting about it is that the image that they project is that it's this very wholesome, good-natured fun. And I'm not suggesting they aren't like that, but they filter and they limit what their children are able to even be involved in terms of activities, other social things that they do, people in their sphere, and what they're allowed to have recorded or take photos of. So when they hang out with friends, their friends are not allowed to video them and use it on social media, because anything that might taint their brand of being this wholesome thing, they won't show. They won't allow that to show because it might hurt their income stream. So it's not that they aren't who they are, but it's a filtered version of who they are, and it's dumbed down, and it's watered down, and it's limited. And, the problem with this, when we start to do this kind of thing, or when we start to present, is it starts off as sort of a fun way to generate a following and to get people to want to know more about us, follow us, and get more content from us. But what ends up happening is quite the opposite effect. What you see is people that no longer are able to live their normal, authentic lives because they fear, once they become famous or micro-famous, being found out as being a phony. And that could destroy their online persona, thereby destroying their revenue stream, their income, their channel, and their brand. And, I read another article about a person who was best friends with this couple that became influencers, and basically they ended up ending the friendship because every single thing they ever did was constantly playing to the camera, constantly trying to create content for their channel. And it had nothing to do with just existing or hanging out or doing anything that was authentic and real. So it becomes a large effort to constantly create this new content and do it within the persona that we've created. You know, there was just an article published by Fortune magazine about a woman who was an influencer making a full-time living. And what's interesting about it is I don't know if she even realized this going into it. And I don't know if she even realizes it now. But she actually just walked away from, shut down her account, and became de-influenced her influencer because she found it, I'm paraphrasing her own words, but basically what she's saying is it's imprisoning. Because what happened was, same thing. She wasn't creating content that had value on its surface. She was the influence. She was the content. And what she said is it's unsustainable. And the reason it's unsustainable, and again, I don't even know if it's conscious to her as to why. It's unsustainable because it's phony, it's superficial. It's based on the way she looks and the stuff that she's doing that isn't true to 100% of who she is. So within that frame of reference, it becomes unsustainable, it becomes a drag, it becomes work, it becomes pressure, and it isn't fun anymore. She wants, what she says is freedom. How ironic. We go into influencing to gain the freedom to run and live our own lives and generate an income, not having to go into a job. She wants to get out of that, to get a job, to have freedom. I mean, it writes itself. It's so insane, but it's so hilarious. Look, I give her a lot of credit for having the guts and courage to speak up and say that. So I'm not criticizing her. All I'm saying is the fact of the matter is she didn't even, I don't think, consciously recognize that the reason the way she was doing the influencing was unsustainable, not influencing in and of itself. And that is is where the line is drawn, and that is where the interesting thing is. So that whole field or that whole way of becoming an influencer is very difficult to sustain. It is very difficult to keep up. And it's not, in general, probably a smart way to go about it. Now, there's another way to do it. And the other way of becoming an influencer is by sharing a passion that we have. So it isn't about us. It's about a subject. It's about a talent. It's about an expertise. It's about an interest. The interest is outside of us. We, in and of ourselves, are not really the influencer. They're interested in our opinion about it, but it's the topic that draws people in. I read an article about a travel blogger. She had a full-time job and went the opposite way. She was working, but loved to travel, loved to write about travel, loved to talk about travel. So she ended up becoming a travel blogger, and she didn't set out to become an influencer. She just did it because she loved it. What ended up happening was she developed a following organically, naturally by doing it. And so she started to go out there in the world and do it more. And as she started to generate a little bit of money from it, she leaned in and started to do it more and more. She's still doing it to this day that I know of, and very happy and very fulfilled by it because it isn't all about her. It's about the travel. It's about the experiences. It's about writing and videoing about a place that you're at and how magical it is. That is the interest. That is the thing that gets people connected to the channel, connected to the content, not because she's pretty or not because she's pretending to be something she's not. And that is the difference. You know, there's a TikToker who's a grandmother who gardens in her like skinny shorts, and she's like 70 years old. And I remember hearing her story and how she was really nervous about putting out her first few videos. She's super passionate about gardening, but she's this grandma, and she's like, you know, everyone says it's this young platform. I think I'm going to get shredded when I put this stuff up there. And the exact opposite happened. Everybody was on there going, oh my God, like you're awesome. You're so authentic. You're so real. I can't believe it. Like you're just who you are. And it's so refreshing. And she built this gigantic following, and couldn't be happier, because the fact of the matter is she isn't pretending. She's just being who she is, putting it on there. And again, it's not about her specifically. It's about her wacky sense of gardening. But she's sharing these tips about gardening and all that other stuff. You know, my son used to watch a video channel about a guy who is passionate about chess. And I'm not a huge chess guy. I mean, I find the game fascinating. I think it's a really intellectual game. And I think there's a lot of stuff about it that makes it really interesting. I find it fascinating on some level. I'm not very good at it. But I have to say, in listening, just sort of by being next to him when he had it on, I found it really compelling. Chess is not a topic I would ever search out on my own, but the fact of the matter is, this guy is really compelling because of what he does. And I found it really interesting and fascinating because, again, it isn't about him. It's about chess, strategy, how to get better at it, what things to do, what things not to do, like all the different openings and all the different moves and strategies. And so if you're passionate about chess, you want to hear what he has to say because he's entertaining and he's interesting, but he's also informative and educational. And that is the difference. That is sustainable because you're living in a place that you're so passionate about something, and that is what you're sharing. Not look at me because I have a pretty face. And that is the primary difference. When we build our influence based on something superficial or false, it becomes harder and harder to keep that up. The money and success feels hollow. It gets old really fast. And we end up longing, ironically, for the freedom that we may have sought out in the first place. Like that influencer that just left because she said it was unsustainable. She wants the freedom of having a corporate job. Who has ever said that in their entire life, that they want the freedom of a corporate job? That's what she wants. Because she just wants to be herself. When we build our influence based on our passions, our interests, our talents, and we share something that gives our lives value and meaning and get rewarded for that, that leads to further validation and happiness, regardless of the money. So those are two completely different, almost opposite outcomes from the exact same process. So the takeaway here is that social media, though it has more than its share of flaws and problems, has without question democratized fame and financial success. We see it from musicians and athletes that get discovered from a song or a video that they made and posted, with no agent, no gatekeeper deciding whether or not they think they're good enough to audition or try out. They showcase their talent, and it's available for the world to see and decide on their own. But there is a fine line we need to be aware of. If we're growing an audience or fan base on superficial things, like the way we look, or if we're pretending to be something or someone that we're not, the whole experience is hollow and ironically feeds our insecurity instead of building our self-esteem. We're telling the world that all we have to offer is our looks, or we aren't worthy or good enough just being ourselves to build a following or fan base. That only leads to depression, unhappiness, and being trapped in a false image-based prison that will never create fulfillment, no matter how many yachts we have to ski behind. On the other hand, if we stand up and show the world who we are and what we have to offer, and we are our authentic selves, not only can we generate the fame and success that we're hoping for, but we can also have validation for who we are and total peace of mind too.